Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Product in LA podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight on some of the exceptional technology leaders we have here as part of the LA community. Very excited for today's episode. Travis Corrigan is joining us.
Hello. Thanks
Hey,
for having me.
Travis. Oh, man, really excited to have you here, man. Thank you for stopping by.
Oh, I'm glad to finally get an invite. I've been seeing you post this on LinkedIn and just wondering, hoping whether I was going to be the kid who was picked last for dodgeball or something like that. So.
Hey, man, you made it the first 100, so you made it here.
I did. Thanks. No, it's great to be here, and it's great to be doing this with you.
Super excited, man. But we'll get to Travis in a second. But first, a word from our sponsors. Product in LA is brought to you by Uruit. Do you need help completing your roadmap items? Uruit is a digital product development agency with over 15 years of experience helping US-based companies build web and mobile apps by embedding directly into their Scrum teams. Uruit's expert full-stack software developers provide quality code to help you get the job done. If you need React or Angular front-end devs, or perhaps help with Node.js, .NET, or Python development, DevOps, or even product or design help to solidify requirements, they're ready to help you close out features and actually release updates to customers. Learn more at uruit.com. That's URUIT.com. We're also brought to you by the Product Managers Association Los Angeles, available at PMA.LA. They are the largest professional organization for product and designers in LA. With more than 3,000 members from over 500 companies, they host monthly meetups, organize the Product Leader Council, where CPOs and heads of product connect in small 6 to 8 member pods, and have a mentorship program where they connect working product managers with students from underrepresented groups to help build a better and more diverse next gen. To learn more about PMA, go to pma.la. To learn more about the mentorship program, go to pma.la/mentorship. Our guest today is Travis Corrigan. He's the founder and head of product and user research at Heavy Metal. And his past roles include director of product management at Beachbody. He was a mentor at Backstage Capital and instructor for General Assembly. And he also has a consultancy background where he's completed projects at Fox, AOL, and PBS. And one interesting fact you might learn from his LinkedIn profile, it's actually a toss-up this time. So I picked two today, everybody. He is a visiting professor of digital product creation at Michigan State University. And he also started a custom suit on demand business back in the day. We got to learn a little bit about both of these, Travis.
Yeah, you had to dig deep for that one. That's sort of an Easter egg that I put in my resume. It was my first entrepreneurial at bat in 2010.
Custom suits.
Custom suits, yeah. This is like pre-Bonobos. I wanted to be the Bonobos of like custom suits.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Yeah, definitely part of the journey, which we can get into in a minute.
Great. And then the Michigan State University.
That one has a backstory that involves my work, also tied to my journey, a background in being a research assistant, and my undergrad for my professors got me to rub elbows with a bunch of people who went on to be administrators at other universities. And so I still keep those contacts. And so someone who was at Utah that I worked with went on to become, I think, the associate dean of the MBA program at MSU.
Wow.
And had a donor say, I want to write a big check and say, I want to do something around digital product creation. So he called me and he goes, what class could you do that would help me make this awesome? And I said, well, first of all, you can't really teach product management. It's very, you can't teach it solely in a classroom. You have to have a lot of practice doing it. And I was like, so this is not going to look like a normal class. What's going to look like is all my lectures are going to be recorded videos, like 10-minute YouTube style videos where I'm giving the basics of the knowledge and the information. And then the homework, I'm going to assign that as homework. The other part of the homework is you have to build a no code prototype. And then when you come into class, there's going to be 3 strangers that we've recruited to give you feedback on your prototype. So 1 stranger per hour was the 3 hour like classroom time. So I use the classroom time as like a user research lab for the teams. And then all the traditional classroom stuff was sort of done as homework. So I had them do I gave them all my templates that I use for user research when I'm doing user research for, to develop a new product or to refine a product. So I was like, here's the templates, wax on, wax off. Don't think too hard about the content that's in it. Um, it's more about getting reps of trying to have an idea, trying to express that idea into an artifact you can put in someone else's hands, and then get the shit kicked out of you with that person's feedback, just to like really inoculate the kids against that, the idea that you can somehow get it right by just imagining things and doing all the MBA things, like doing the work around the work. There's like, I wanted to sort of set all that stuff aside. So it was a 8-week practicum. And that it was very experiential learning. It was learning by doing.
That's awesome.
And so, it was great kudos to that admin who had the courage to let me into an academic environment and teach the way that I did, which was it was transformative for me for sure. I think.
And I imagine the students, I mean, one of the common themes that come up on this show is that there really was no education coming into product management in the past. I'm sitting here wondering, wow, I wish I had this class when I was in, school again. Because one of the things I tell people who are trying to break into the field is like, all right, if you have no experience, build something, just build anything. It'd be a website that's just kind of a painted door. There's no real substance to it. Buy some Google AdWords, check out the analytics. Like, for you to have them build this prototype, have the feedback, you're giving them the gift of something to put in a portfolio and something to talk about in an interview, even if they've had no product experience. Like, well, I actually created this for a class, but it was real and I had this user feedback and here's how I handled it. So I would say kudos to you for creating this project, this program where it really isn't just reading product from a textbook, which I agree. There's so much of this there's book knowledge, but that really can't compare to getting the shit kicked out of you in your daily life and when you're working day to day in this stuff. So pardon everyone for our language here, but we might have to change the switch to explicit for this one episode.
Yeah.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah. Unfortunately, swearing is a part of my self-expression. So I'll try to keep it down, but
oh, it's all good. No. We'll flip the switch for this one. So, going along the lines of not, having classes or not having classes in product management, again, love to learn your journey into technology. How did you find your way into these fields that we get to play in every day?
Yeah. So the class itself was effectively a compressed version of my journey into product management. So,
awesome.
Or into technology. So I went to the University of Utah. I chose entrepreneurship as my major because this was the recession. And for those of you who didn't experience that professionally, it was a hard time. And
was it an available major in entrepreneurship, or is that something you built?
It was an available major. Yeah. Oh. And so my decision to do that was, wow, there's a lot of people who cannot find jobs right now. I certainly don't think I can outcompete them. And so maybe I should build the skills for creating a job, if only solely for me, right? Is to have a fallback that if I can't convince some hiring manager to hire me, well, then I can always have something that I can create for myself. So it was a little bit of an act of survival during the Great Recession. So that put me in touch with some really amazing professors at that time who were ex Silicon Valley execs, worked at, helped. They had a lot of exits and then also had done the PhD. So they had really great grounding in both theory about like how new firms come to be,
right,
and then had lived it as well. So they could sort of help contextualize one's individual anecdotal experience of launching one company to something that's like a little bit broader, but they also didn't over index on the theory the classroom part of it that we were talking about for that class. So I was doing that as my undergrad to make some money. I did some undergrad research assistant work. Um,
In entrepreneurship, or what was that in?
yeah, the first project that I worked on was we downloaded the entire data set from Capital IQ to look at every funding round from 1980 to 2010. And
Wow.
I didn't know SQL, I didn't know any programming, but I knew Excel. And so this was 400,000 rows. And at the time, Excel only could have one Excel workbook could only have 68,000 rows. So I had to actually break up the series into like chunks of 5 years. And then we started with, I think, with like 60 columns, and it blew out to about 200 columns. And I didn't sleep for like a week. But it was the most exhilarating thing to do. And the reason why we did it is because there's this thing called Winter Strategy Conference that Utah holds. And for those who don't know, strategy and management is sort of the umbrella of people who think of like how companies should operate. Most of the things that have been written and are taught in MBA programs, the scholars who write those things, those textbooks or teach from those things, all hang out at Snowbird like for a week, 1 week out of the year. And so one of the entrepreneurship professors I was pretty close with, got a slot. He was sort of earlier in his academic career, and so he and I we looked at the research, and then I had to just grind my way through it. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I was hallucinating at the end. It was insane. But what happened was that we used that data set to effectively point out that not like everything we thought about the literature about how corporate venture capitalists, guys and girls who invest out of a company's, like a corporation's, like Google Ventures is a good example of a corporate venture capitalist.
Right.
How do they behave differently than just independent ones who only have LPs, right? There was theories about that stuff, but the data around it wasn't a lot. So we added a lot of empirical data, and it sort of was like this. We sort of had taken the entire 40 years of corporate venture capital literature and just turned it over on its head. And it's just like nullified one dude's career. And
was there like a takeaway? What's the killer takeaway?
Well, the killer takeaway was that I got an invite to pursue a PhD as a junior undergrad, because they're like, oh, Travis can read papers, and then he can understand what data set would verify that thing or nullify that thing, and then he could actually make it and bring it back around. So it was the metabolization of the theory and then proving it or not, and then kind of sort of the interdependent relationship of that stuff. So out of that experience, I was like, I can never do that again. So I started teaching myself some Python a little bit. I was trying to make some money, so I taught myself some WordPress, a little bit of PHP, enough to kind of know how these things work, what the concepts are. And then it came time to do a PhD. I did not study very hard for the GMAT because I was like, oh, I pretty much I've gone to conferences already. I've been talking to researchers from Harvard. I've already got my dissertation. Like I know exactly how to line this up to be a slam dunk of a thing. I have the data set ready to go. Like it's all like, it's just add water, right? And it was ready to go. Bombed the GMAT, like super embarrassing bombed. So then I studied really hard, and then I got a worse score. And it was around that time I was like, all right, well, I guess academia is not for me, because they're like, sorry, we can't you're already a risk just being an undergrad. We can't sort of take that risk of getting into a PhD program is pretty political. So I didn't know what to do next. I met a guy named Jerry Campbell, who was a friend of the professor. Jerry has a storied career, Compaq, Alta Vista, AOL. Really great operator, really great PM. Was the head of AOL Search in 2002 and brokered a search deal with a small company many of us may have heard of called Google. And then from there went on to be the global head of technology for Reuters before it was acquired by Thomson. So that guy came, he was kind of like coming out of retirement a little bit, needed somebody to be sort of his lackey. And
were you that guy?
I happened to be that guy because I was driving him. It fell to me to drive him around when he came to visit. Utah and speak at Utah. And so from there, that relationship formed. So I moved to California in 2012, and I was effectively apprenticing underneath that guy when we went to go consult at AOL, at
Right.
Fox, at PBS, and stuff like that. And I learned a lot about what it means to be an executive from a guy who sort of was he was 45 at the time. I was 25 at the time. And so it sort of distilled, a bunch of lessons into that. And he was really generous about letting me take on a lot of different things. So we joined Beachbody together after consulting for them about their digital strategy to go from DVDs to streaming. And then during that time, uh, I did a lot of cool things at Beachbody, which we could get into. But that's sort of my journey into it. I had a research background, got plucked out of obscurity, some backwaters like suburb in Utah, and then found myself in Los Angeles, and then thrown in front of the AOL Instant Messenger team, like literally 2 weeks after I had graduated college. And they're like, "What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to help?" And so the only thing that I knew how to do was do research, do human research. And so I would take the
That's
prototypes
right.
out and go to the Santa Monica promenade, that open air mall, and I would do intercepts and I would get feedback. And it became very clear that all of the ideas people had about what would work were being built in a vacuum, and there was like, no way to, I don't know, get a sense of whether we were on the right direction or not. Like it was like we had to build the ruler and use the ruler at the same time a little bit in terms of kind of coming up with that product. So I ended up doing a lot of user research. And then very quickly, that user research vaulted me ahead of the people who had more experience than me, because I was more grounded into the actual user's experience, their actual behaviors. I knew what non-obvious things would work and would not work because I did the grunt work of going out and learning.
Yeah. You're in your
And
stripes.
so yeah, so a lot of my quote unquote vision as a product person has actually just come from just being willing to be patient and have more user conversations in a shorter amount of time than most people. So that's sort of been my path, is just research. And then once the research is there, what you should execute based on the insights from the research is pretty clear. So that's been my journey into it.
That's fascinating because I've known you for who knows now, maybe 5 years, maybe more than that. And I've heard you mention that you've done some unholy number of user research interviews.
Mm-hmm.
What was the number?
I stopped counting last year after I crossed 1,200.
Yeah, out of control. It's interesting. I've never put together this real parallel of the research that you love. You love the UX, you love the product, but it's really this fascination with research and this. I guess is it a relationship between the people and the technology? Which aspect of the research is so exciting to you?
Yeah, so actually came down to an idea, an insight, an experience that I had in my undergrad. There's a paper called "Skirting the Issues" about gender bias in decision making, and
Okay,
it went about as bad as you think it would.
especially then.
For the audience, there's huge eyebrow raises from Ethan just now when I mentioned the gender. So the way it worked was this: it was a really elegantly designed experiment. They had a prospectus for a company that was some fictitious company that was going to go IPO,
Right.
and they gave it to a bunch of MBAs, like 600 of them, 3 different groups, and they had to come up with, to read through the prospectus, all the numbers, all that stuff, and then say, based on analysis that is taught to MBAs, how much do you think the strike price is going to be, or the stock price at IPO? What what do you think the success of this firm is going to be? How much should we pay each of the executives? All of that stuff. And what was really elegant about this was that they had 3 different versions that they gave. And the only difference between the versions, all the figures about the company were the same. The only thing they changed was the thumbnail of the pictures of the top management team and the name. But all, like, where schools they came from, all the experience was exactly the same. And they said that it went, so they had male leaning teams, they had a mixed group, and then they had female leaning teams, and it went about as bad as you think it would go. And um, what was amazing was that these MBAs were absolutely committed that they had done objective analysis,
Oh,
even though we clearly saw statistically significant deviations in who should be replaced at the top management team, how valued the company was, all that stuff, and I thought, holy crap, the brain is, you can tweak the brain like that. Like, they literally just changed the JPEGs and like 3 lines of text on each of these prospectus.
out of like a long perspective,
Out of a
right?
long prospectus, the thing that it's like, it was the equivalent, uh, it was the equivalent of, like, imagine a special pebble that if you throw that pebble into the Nile River, it redirects the entirety of the river, the
Right.
direction of the river. And I was like, you could do that with human brains. And so that really was, I'm like, that's one really powerful in the wrong hands, which we see a lot in tech today. But
Yeah.
I was like, I want to use this power for good, but I also want to get really powerful at this thing.
Yeah.
And because I wanted to be able to call my shots and be predictive about new products. I wanted to I studied entrepreneurship. I want to start my own company. And part of that is being right about the future behavior of other people, which means you have to understand how behavior works and how to change it. And so that's where the love for research really came into it, is more about how is technology, how is something that we put on a screen going to be that magic pebble for the benefit of that person, right? I was like, okay, I could do a PhD, spend about 2 years working on a paper, write it up, come to some brilliant insight, and like, no, like 12 people in the world are going to know it or understand it.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
I could do the equivalent amount of work and ship that as an app. And not only do people not have to read it, they just get to use the thing and get the benefits of all that research anyway. And so it was like, okay, how that was sort of really where the spark came from, was like, research is a superpower, and it's an uber superpower because a lot of people hate doing it. They hate doing it.
Yeah. Or they,
'Cause
they put it in like the back of the line in terms of, design, engineering, strategy.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and for me, what's really great about it is that, um, when I step into a product situation, I never have to worry about whether or not I'm gonna be the smartest guy in the room, because I don't need to be. Like, I don't, what I mean? I don't need to have some flash of brilliance. It's just like, I have a systematic way of finding this thing out. And I mean, for my clients, that's what I say. They're like, "What do you think we should do?" I go, "I don't know." And frankly, any other consultant who tells you very confidently what you should do is probably wrong. And is probably lying to themselves, which means they're lying to you.
Huh.
And
And
I was like,
potentially not even knowing, like going back to that study, they may think they're being very objective, but hey, have no idea how subjective they are unconsciously or subconsciously.
right, yeah. So a lot of my career has been, how do I recreate elegant experiments like that to get people to like, to find, like, that experiment, unfortunately, was, it illuminated a lot of negativity in human nature. And I was like, how do we illuminate the good in human nature about a behavior that's coming up,
Yeah.
a new behavior that I thought that would be, I was like, that's kind of how I'd like to try to make a mark on the world, is try to just nudge wherever I can human behavior en masse towards a more positive future version of the future rather than a negative one.
Where do you see the future going for this type of research, this type of, you know, this prototyping and user research, trying to see what customers like and what small changes have impact and move needles? Like, what are you seeing out there and where do you see it going right now?
Yeah, I think AI is going to really transform this whole profession. Right now, and for a lot of my career, I had to record these sessions because I couldn't rely on my own notes. I was going to miss something that was said, because it's when you're moderating a session, you have to like really be on.
Right.
You have to have a version of your own persona that makes that stranger feel really comfortable with you, such that they're going to divulge details about their life, and not regress to acquiescence bias, which is they're just going to tell me what they think I want to hear because I'm paying them, and it's a stranger thing.
Right.
So when you're trying to take notes while you're in that situation, it just doesn't work. So I did a lot of recordings, then I would get the transcripts, then I have to manually go through the transcripts. And so if I've interviewed 5 people, I have to go to like participant 1, minutes 5 through 10, and look at what they said, and then go to the next one, 5 through 10, see what they said, and put all that into a spreadsheet. And then I have to go to the next, go back to participant 1, minutes 10 through 15. We were talking about this. This is what this person said. And so you just try to get, across a sample size, what is it each person said? And so it's very manual, but also it's incredibly subjective. Like there's just a lot of I've actually run some experiments where I run the same transcripts through multiple user researchers, and these are people from Google, from Netflix. Like they're really great, and vastly different interpretations of the same thing. Vastly different, and for different reasons. And so I think one of the great things about AI is that you can, in fact, reduce the biases in analysis. Not only can you accelerate, I mean, a lot of people are talking about accelerating the analysis part. I mean, for every 1 minute of interview, there's roughly about 10 minutes of analysis somebody has to do. And by the way, this isn't just for user researchers. This is for like academics, like linguists have to do this all by hand. Change management consultants often do rounds of interviews with 30 employees, right? They do this the same process. And so this analysis of human to human conversations to go from unstructured dialogue based data to something that's somewhat structured and preserves, without oversimplifying, preserves the actual thing that we've been trying to measure, is I think an unsolved challenge in this part. And what's amazing is that a vast majority of a company's data is unstructured dialogue-based data like this. And we in analytics, we have this thing called a data layer. We don't have an equivalent for conversations. And I think that a lot of this stuff is about to be operationalized and automated in a way that will really enhance not just the speed of user research and getting insights from qualitative stuff, but will probably reduce the amount of human noise that comes from the researchers themselves. And so I think really there's going to have to be a whole new generation sort of trained on using AI to do qualitative research, because for the history of humanity, we've been doing it manually. And I think that's a really cool opportunity.
That's incredible. And the ability for the AI to take this data and compile it across these different platforms. When it's unstructured, put it into a structure. And it is somewhat pattern based. So it is automatable. It's not impossible. This isn't like, light years away. This is just a very strong application of technology that's up and coming.
Mm-hmm. If you go on YouTube and you just look at like how to analyze a conversation from linguists, if we can train humans to do this, you can train a computer to do it.
That's right.
And so I think that it's possible right now. It's just someone has to figure that thing out. And I'm trying to figure that out.
That's awesome, Travis. And grounding this in LA, I have to ask you, we ask all of our guests, what is the most LA thing that's happened to you? This can be tech related or not.
I was thinking about this question. I have got a couple of small vignettes. Can I give more than one?
You can give more than one.
So I had one when I first moved here, where I don't know if anyone's seen this movie called We Were Soldiers. It's a Mel Gibson movie about Vietnam or whatever. Anyway, the actor and actress, so Mel Gibson's in it.
Right.
So I moved to Santa Monica, and then I went to Cafe Lux on 7th in Montana.
Nice.
And then I noticed that I got in line behind the actress from that movie. I was like, oh, it's the actress from, by the way, this is like my second week here.
Okay.
And then
you're fresh.
Yeah. And then she's taller than me. And so she looked over me and she said, oh, hey, good to see you.
Did you think she was speaking to you at first?
I don't know. I knew she was talking to someone behind me, but I didn't I didn't turn
Your heart
around.
was fluttering.
It was Yes, I was. And then, so I looked down at like some hand that was on the counter, and it looked like it was covered in sawdust and like tons of hair. And I just kind of, my eyes just followed the arm up, and then I was like, oh my God, that's Mel Gibson. So I'm like literally
Oh, wow.
sandwiched between the two actors who were meeting to hang out from that. And I was like, this is amazing. Um, when I was at Beachbody, we did a lot of cool stuff with interactive fitness that got the attention of Apple.
Okay.
Back when, like, this was like Watch OS 3, like right when real-time heart rate was available. And I had effectively tried to recreate the magic of Peloton in our platform
Right.
using Apple's technology. And so it was sort of right time, right place, right sort of product
Was
experience.
that P90X time
Yeah,
period?
P90X.
All right. And that was the hottest thing at that time. That was incredible.
Yeah. Well, so it wasn't when P90X was out. It was sort of like, this was 2016.
Okay.
But we got into Apple's good graces for a lot of cool things around co-marketing events. We got invited to a lot of that stuff. One of the
That's
ones
great.
was going to New York for a private, like, I don't know, marketing showcase or app showcase. So Apple organized some media day, like rented some house in Manhattan. That was amazing.
Okay.
And we had to do a bunch of demos of stuff. And so because I was the lead on that thing, they wanted Tony Horton to come out and talk about it.
Yes.
So I had to spend a bunch of time like showing Tony how it worked, what was working on it. And then we flew out to Manhattan, and I got to hang out with him. And that dude is awesome. That guy is and he is so fit. He's like 60. He was like kicking my ass in the like hotel gym. Anyway, we go out for
You went to the hotel gym with Tony Horton?
Yes, yeah. And
That's
then
great.
we did the event together, and we were hanging out. But the night before the event, we sort of did like some rehearsals, and then we had the thing the next day. Tony and myself and Jerry and somebody else were another executive at Beachbody. We were getting pizza. It was like literally across the street from Ground Zero, and two really drunk dudes from Staten Island like stumbled in.
Yes.
And they were like, you look like this guy from that, like the P90X thing or whatever. And Tony Horton's just like, yeah, I get that a lot. And so I still have this video of him, so that it comes out that he's actually the guy, and they're like super excited or whatever. And so then one of them is like, well, I'm going to challenge you to an arm wrestle. And so
some random kid from Staten Island.
No, these are like middle-aged dudes from Staten Island.
Yeah,
who are
even
just
better.
Yeah. So I have video of that somewhere. And then
and
Tony won. Yes.
Oh, nice.
It was awesome.
That's great.
And then the last story is from recently. So I live in Santa Monica, and there's an amazing little movie theater called The Arrow on Montana, and they screen almost exclusively only in film. And for like the 10 years I've lived here, I'm like, I should go see a thing there. Occasionally I randomly see just like a big line coming out of there. But they've always screened like old movies and stuff like that. So it's Christmas Eve, this past Christmas Eve, and my girlfriend's in town, and I say, hey, let's go. They're showing Elf. I was like, do you want to go see Elf at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve? And she's like, yeah, that sounds great. I love that movie.
Theater.
In a movie theater.
Yeah.
So we step in, and dude, it was exactly like going to a movie theater in the 90s. Like there's no reclining seats, like, but it's a community. Like everyone really loves seeing film. So it's like being in a really great audience.
Yeah.
There's no cell phones. Like they don't even have to really say it and stuff like that. But there was a surprise, and the surprise was that Jon Favreau, who was directed it and starred in it, he's also directed like
Swingers,
Iron Man, tons of stuff. He did The Mandalorian, which came out, today. He just showed up with like 40 people and then did a random Q&A. Like it wasn't even announced that he was going to do that. And so I'm sitting there, just my girlfriend and I are like, did we just like time travel to the 90s into this really epic like movie going experience? And what was amazing about that is he told some stories. Like he told the story about how they made the gum scene where Buddy's eating gum off the,
Oh gosh.
off the sidewalk
At the
there
subway.
at the
Yeah.
subway, the time frame with which they shot it in. So it was right after 9/11.
Oh man.
And the idea that they wanted what he did in the film to make it feel like it has been timeless forever. And that movie came out 20 years ago, right? And so it was a really cool. I think for me that's probably the most LA thing that I've done, because this is Hollywood, right? This is Tinseltown. This is where culture is one of the few places in the world where culture is made. And I
Right.
got to really be immersed in people who make it, right? And
Yeah.
also like get to enjoy the product of their creativity. And so that happened recently, and I it's one I cherish for sure.
Wow. That I love that one. And personally, I love it because Jon Favreau, Swingers is one of my favorite movies, especially as a teen growing up. So that's amazing just to be able to be in the same room with him and hear him talk about it, and to see what he's gone on to do, and to hear that he's still. I remember reading about when he was doing the live action animated Lion King, and he was using technology to break boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, and what
Um,
was really great about the Q&A is he picked on teenagers, like
mm,
the younger kids, which was amazing, by the way. The teens were totally like future directors. Like they're there
yeah,
because they're like, this is what I want to do with my life, is I want to craft experience
yeah,
in film
film,
form.
yes,
Yeah. And as somebody who makes technology, I feel very similar about how we make technology, is that we are just effectively crafting experience to make for other people, for the benefit of those people. And so um when he what he said about using technology, one of the last questions that one of the kids asked is like, what would you give advice to a 14-year-old future filmmaker? And he goes, this is the best time to be a
ah,
filmmaker. He says, you can do everything on your iPhone now. And
yeah,
he's like, you don't have to ask for permission you can get your product into the hands of people without permission anymore. And the cost of everything is much cheaper. He's like, and he told the story about all the fights he had to have with the studio to get the claymation into Elf, when Buddy walks out and he's like upset, and like you have like the snowman that he talks to and stuff like that. That was an artistic decision that he had to fight with the studio on. And so he's like, yeah, even with Swingers, there's a lot he's like, I just had to fight and like constantly convince somebody of my vision in order just to do the work. And now you don't have to do that because of the technology. And I think that there's a similar parallel, I think, for our industry and technology, and particularly around product managers.
yeah,
And this is going back to the beginning of this episode. That's what I've really tried to instill, in anyone who wants to get into product, is that you can just make product. You
yes,
can no code now. No code machine learning is a thing. Like it really is so easy these days. A decade ago, I had to fight tooth and nail to find a technical co-founder to make my ideas work, and now I don't.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's a really amazing thing about where we're at these days. And um, and so, for PMs, you could just spend a weekend spinning up something on Bubble um, or or any of the no code platforms, get your idea out, and then, go to usertesting.com and find 5 or 6 people to take a look at it, get your feedback, and then iterate on that. And if you do that like 4 or 5 weekends in a row, you have effectively a really amazing case study to show to prospective employer that your instincts, your decision making capabilities, your judgment is based on reps, not like innate characteristics, right? And so I think it's a really cool time to be a PM if you're willing to put in the grunt work to prove to a hiring manager that, you can get the work done, and not get the work done, but you have a method for getting it done in any future project that's handed to you.
That's incredible advice, Travis, and so true. And in this, similar to the Great Recession, we're in a time when that kind of hustle is necessary if you're looking to really break in. So Thank you again so much, Travis. I know we went a little over time here, but this is a fun one, and I loved hearing the Hollywood anecdotes. Really appreciate that. And this is LA. This is product in LA. This is what it's about. So thank you again, Travis, for stopping by and sharing your story.
Thanks, Ethan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to thank Travis again, and I'd like to thank our sponsors as PMALA available at pma.la, and Uruit available at uruit.com, uruit.com. I'd like to thank you all for sticking around with us, and we'll catch you next time on Product in LA.